Hello and welcome back to the channel, and thank you for joining me on another of my interview series. These are growing all the time with more and more fascinating and interesting people. Today I'm talking to Neil Petrie, who is a former military officer, a businessman, and somebody who is focusing on direct democracy, a hybrid democracy in fact. Neil, welcome to the show.
Richard, thank you. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
I was very intrigued by the hybrid bit. You know, we all think of democracy that we're supposed to vote for something, and then we have the MPs representing us and going off, and then sometimes that's not actually happening, and we kind of see a lot of that at the moment, where you wonder what state democracy is really in. But there's lots of different versions of it. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and then tell us a bit about the book that you're writing, which is called One Vote Away, coming out very soon, and basically about the direct democracy movement.
Right, well, thanks again. As I said, as you said, my background, I was military intelligence. I was in the army for 16 years. I went to Sandhurst in 1981, and I retired in 97. And then I went into working really in the security industry, which is, not that unusual for ex-military. I was all over Central Asia and the Middle East, and basically set up with some friends out in the Middle East, one or two things out there, and came back to UK. My main drive has been over the years to look at the direct democracy as the opportunity for us to take our democracy on to the next level. I'm sure most of your viewers, like me, not happy at all with the party system, and so I've been looking into that for many years, and wanted to put it into words. So put a book out there to explain to people the options that there are. And as you said, I'm glad you picked up on the hybrid bit there, Richard. I think it's something that we don't realise. Something people might say that in Switzerland they've got direct democracy, but in fact it's a combination. So they have a hybrid, and there's the ancient Greeks had direct democracy, and people might be aware of that, and the Romans too, where you voted for every single law, and everyone had to vote. And in fact, they used to come out with a stick and beat people to go and vote.
Oh, charming.
Exactly. So you were made to vote, and they had a lot of juries, 500 people on their juries for certain things. So it was a very different system to ours, all the Swiss. So what the Swiss did was to keep parties and also add on the referendum as a check. This was back in 1848. Okay, this is when they started it. But the hybrid bit is the fact that you keep the parties, so you got people to do like the day-to-day grind in Parliament, right, etc. And if you want to support a particular side of the argument, there's a party for you. But every time they put a law out, there is the option to take a vote on it.
So from the public.
From the public. So you can.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, so we've got these things like 15-minute cities or a policy to head towards net zero that are clearly a lot of people are not very happy about. In that scenario, something as major as those things, the people would actually have a legitimate say to say yes or no whether they like the idea.
Oh, absolutely. This is the whole point of the hybrid.
Right.
You've got, the politicians themselves also have to look very carefully at what they are going to put out before they put it out, because they know there is this hurdle where the public, if they can gather enough support, get enough signatures, for instance, in Switzerland, it's 50,000 signatures.
Oh, right.
But say for UK, you'd maybe have 400, 500,000 would be the hurdle. But if you got, say, 500,000 signatures, you would then be able to get the referendum. And it's a first past the post referendum, and that's it. So it's slightly more technical than that, you can amend the law. But basically, if you don't like it as a people, you have the final say on it. It's like a quality control check as the cars going out of the factory. As the laws coming out of Parliament, before it would go to the King for his assent, it would be signed off by the people, or they wouldn't bother.
Yeah,
It's
so
the only,
it's kind of a step before, as you just said there, before the royal assent, because at the moment we've only going by if the king doesn't like it,
correct.
and it's like, well, if the king thinks, oh no, this will be all right, we'll go to net zero because I have an agenda of, green planet and this, that, and the other, and it all sounds good to me. But the people might say, hold on a minute, it's our lives you're talking about, and it makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, I think it does. I think most people, when they understand how it might work and how it worked for them, rather than for us and
Mm,
people, rather than for the parties, which are controlled obviously by the whips, and the whips are controlled by the party backers in the end. So you have that oligarchy really that runs each party. That's a natural way of the world, really, for
yeah,
thousands of years. So the Swiss kicked over the traces, really, and changed things. And they didn't just do it with referendums, they allowed people the initiative as well. So 1848, they came in with the referendum, but it was just on matters to do with their constitution. They had a new constitution, 1848. It was a year after their civil war. They had a little civil war, 1847. About 100 people got killed. It was a minor civil war, but
right.
they thought about it and they came up with this idea. Let's
So,
just
so what? So this. I'm just trying to think because they're, you. What I'm trying to get at is something had happened to make them want to change the system. And what was it like before then? Was it more tyrannical or dictatorship or like we have today?
It was similar. It was. They had basically there are 26 cantons now, like big counties, and so that's what they had. And
Mm,
but they had less at that point, but they've become 26 now. There's about 20 odd. But each canton was split. You'd have maybe the city in the canton and the rural area,
oh, I
and the
see.
rural area, thought differently to the city, and the cities were run by usual the money men, and they were ruthless. They were, and so the Swiss had a lot of uh, peasant wars, as it were, right through the 17th century and 18th century. There's about 10 that I've looked at.
Mm,
So it wasn't all the Swiss were all you know sweetness and light, not at all.
no.
So you had the usual thing of the elite and the oligarchy crushing the peasants and what would be
So
a normal voter today.
how did they get to the point where they were able then to change the system? Because I guess that's what we would be looking at now is, that I'm sure the MPs and the Parliament and the Cabinet particularly who are enjoying this incredible amount of power that they have, especially over the COVID times when they could tell people to stay inside and be as dictatorial as they are. How did they get to that point where they could then say, actually, new system, sorry guys, we're going to do this?
Well, Napoleon invaded them, so
Ah,
the early 1800s, and of course he brought with him all of the revolutionary equality stuff.
right.
So, that had an effect on the politics. They were subjugated, but he created what is the Helvetica, the Helvetic Confederation. So that's why you see CH. It's a Confederation Helvetica.
Ah, right, okay.
So it's not Switzerland; it's a Helvetica, confederation. And so this Confederation of Cantons saw the light, as it were, under Napoleon, you might say. Not all of them, but enough of them to make those changes over the next 20, 30, 40 years. But there were Catholic and Protestant differences. So this is what the Civil War was about. And they had other issues with regards to the languages, and also different countries around them that had a say in some of the cantons, Germany, Austria, etc. So there were these differences, but they realized, over this kind of period after Napoleon, that it's best to not really get involved in too many fracas. But then they had their own little ones spilled over because of the Catholics basically rebelling against the Protestant element. But they obviously decided after what they'd seen the previous 50 years, enough of that. Let's sort this out, and we'll listen to the other people, and we'll create this new confederation with a new constitution, which they put together in 1848. And what was significant was they said constitution can only be changed when you have all of the cantons and all of the people voting on it. So basically, that's what implemented the referendums in Switzerland.
Right.
So you still had the parties, but you had this referendum was introduced at that point, and it's been developing ever since 1848. And I think it was 1891 they brought in the initiative, which is where, you as a citizen, Richard, you could say, I don't want this 15-minute city in Worthing. And if you gathered enough signatures, in Switzerland, it's double the number that you need for a referendum. So it's 100,000.
Right.
So you might need 800 or 800,000 or 1 million here in Britain. And so that's how they changed their country. Okay. And they had basically they eradicated obviously all of these peasant rules. They were already a neutral country before they changed the constitution, and they were quite wealthy at that point already, because they'd taken in a lot of the Huguenots from France. They had some industries going, chocolate, of course, as you all well know.
Oh yes.
And, yeah, as we all do. Yeah, and over the last century, they've just kept tweaking the system, and the constitution can be changed very easily, but you just need to have a vote on it. So
Right.
you have to have. There is mandatory referendums on constitutional changes. Okay, so that's how they operate, and it's not all right, it's not all left. It's very consensual. So people come together, work out what's best, and because they've got to get it through the referendum anyway, they know that. And
So did you in your stuff you sent me, you implied that if the people wanted a different rule or wanted to suggest a rule, they could suggest it from the bottom up, that would then be debated and what have you, and then go, rather than it's only what the MPs, here are the rules we want to put forward, but people like me could come up with a complete, I could say I want to be able to have the freedom to cycle over everybody's front garden, and people may say, well, yeah, actually it's quite a nice idea, but most people might say that's actually a ridiculous idea, of course, but I would have the right to put that up. Is that right?
That's correct, pretty much. So there are lots of things that you can, put forward, and if you can get the people to back you, then you'll get the referendum. So they generally fail, those initiatives, okay, but it's only about 10-20% pass, but they do pass.
Yeah.
And about I think it's about 30-40% or more of the referendums, they get the law kicked out, or changed.
So it can work. It really does work for the people. Then, I mean, you could, if there's something that's blatantly missing a law that would be really beneficial, and the chance that everybody says, actually, yeah, that is great. We really want that. Then it can go up, and then it has the potential to go to a referendum, and people can vote on it, and then it becomes law. How do you take the situation we're in now? Where, I mean, are we looking for another Napoleon Bonaparte to come in and basically, or do we need a civil war? Because, I mean, when was the last civil war? 1685, I think, wasn't it, that we had? Well, that was the last pitched battle.
Revolution. That was the revolution, yeah. Right about that.
Yeah. So, do we? How do we change the system that we have to anything else? Because I'm sure that they're going to hold on to power as long as they want.
Oh, absolutely. And it's down to us in the end. But as I wrote to you, Lord Dicey, okay, who was he's one of the greatest constitutional lawyers, England has had, or Britain. And he wrote in the Victorian era a book called, it's an introduction to the study of the law of the Constitution. And this book ended up being so powerful. I mean, 2 years after it's published, Gladstone was waving it around in Parliament and quoting from it for the changes that he wanted. So that book became one of the authorities within the Constitution, because the Constitution is basically based around statute law, common law, and these authorities, and some other items as well. But one of the authorities now is Dicey's book. So he's seen as being the guy who is the premier constitutional lawyer, from the past. And what he wrote in support of the referendum. He said the referendum is the only way. What did he say now? It's the only check on the predominance of party. So it's the only way we can control them, and it's got to be. it means that things get tested in the basically the court of public opinion. So that's how he saw it working, in that, it controlled the parties and it gave the people the chance. And it shows that it's got the sanction of the electors. So in other words, when you've got an important act coming up, you would have had this referendum on it, and that showed that when it goes to the king for his assent, he knows he's not getting some ropey regulation, on Tony Blair or whoever, Boris, whatever. It's actually something that has passed the people.
Yes.
So he's actually seeing laws that are coming to him then after this is introduced. Okay. So now what's important as well, of recent years, Lord Sumption, who's recently retired from the Supreme Court, he said that in constitutional terms, our constitution is very adaptable and it can be easily amended. He said, in fact, you'd think you'd need to have a referendum, or if you think you need both houses, you don't. After the Parliament Act, I think it was 1910, all you need is the House. Now, how do you get the House to vote on it? Because it's the Commons, just the House of Commons. Well, if you think about it, if the Tories are all looking down the barrel of a gun, and I mean this electorally, which is what we're looking at fairly soon, as we all know. Now, you've got to think the Canadian Progressive Conservative Party, I think it was in 1993, they went into the election, they were the government, and they had 156 seats, and after that election, there were two left.
Wow.
154 gone. So this is what these people are looking at right now, in my opinion. So, I think, obviously, what we need to do is get people motivated to push their MP to go for the hybrid system, okay? Because, the parties will be maintained. You still need people to run parliament. You still need laws to be promulgated. You still need representatives to meet with other governments, blah, 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 yeah? So the parties are there, and this still exists in Switzerland. But here's another kicker for you, Richard. If you're a Swiss MP, you only work 12 weeks of the year.
Wow.
They do 4 3-week sessions, that's it.
Yeah.
But they only get paid a daily rate, and they have no secretaries. Because
Blimey.
Yeah, they've got normal jobs.
Oh, see.
Yeah. No, they're not. It's not a padded job. No, they're real.
Do they have surgeries in the way that our MPs do, in which they're sort of answering all the queries that people might have and helping them with planning permission and all the sort of minor things that they have to do?
What they've done is a lot of the kind of political issues are pushed down. The point is, you see, it's about localization,
right,
where the power goes down, and you only maintain in the government with the MPs, the defence and other major, foreign affairs, all of these issues, and some, structural and infrastructure, requirements, and they'll be covered by the government, the railway or whatever. So they'll coordinate with all the cantons over these major, issues that affect the whole country. But otherwise, education system goes down to the cantons. Now, everyone in the canton can then vote on what type of education system they want. Now, so there's 26 cantons, and I think there's 26 different education systems. You might think, oh, this is chaos. This is madness. But the education system in Switzerland, believe it or not, the WEF says it's the best education system in the world.
Right.
It has that influence. Because
I'm not sure I necessarily believe anything the WEF says, but mind you, but
I know, that's interesting though, isn't it? And they're not alone. It's very highly regarded around the world. I'm just making the point that someone who's looking at, at that level globally can't avoid saying it's a very good system. So the kids go to school there, and they have a slightly different way of being educated, but that's what the Catholic people want in their canton mainly, or the Protestants in theirs, or the Italian speakers in the Italian area. So
it varies for what we would have as a county for county then.
Correct.
So that people in that county can vote for just what's good for their area, whereas if you're, I'm down in Sussex, but if you were up in Yorkshire or Northumberland, they would be voting perhaps because I don't know, the terrain is slightly different. It may favour that actually kids go to school in the afternoons or whatever it might be, so that they can affect that it's not one size fits all.
Yeah, exactly. People do vary in their culture, even around the country, obviously.
Right.
We have dialects, different ways of thinking, different industries might even,
Yeah.
if you're a big farming rural area, you might want the schools run a bit differently to one where you want all these high-tech, because there's going to be a lot of high-tech jobs, in London or Manchester, whatever.
Get the kids back on the land.
Yeah.
Scaring crows like they used to do.
Yeah. Get them out there,
Get them out. Bit of fresh air, yeah. Pick up the stones, scare the crows, don't eat the crops, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, no, but I get what you... So that's really interesting. There's a lot of common sense in that. How do you equate... Because I often hear people saying, well, one of the problems with a referendum is it's a bit like mob rule. If you take the Brexit one, it was, 49-51. It was like, well, there's a large percentage who didn't win... who might feel they were disaffected in whatever way you vote. So how, so it's like just one vote over the 50% suddenly makes it a thing. But you still have perhaps 49 people a little bit disgruntled. Does that...
Well, the point is there, when you look at the parties, you can get the same situation in Parliament where you've got a small majority.
Mm.
So you're saying, those 2, 5, 10, 15 MPs, whatever it might be, are swaying it. Oh, that's hardly fair then. It's the same thing. Okay, but who voted for them? All right, each party may get 20, 30% of the actual national vote, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
You might get 51%, or say you've got 40% of the winning vote, but how many people actually voted is another thing. So you've still got a low number of people. I think it was Cameron was in the 20s, his actual percentage of the country that voted for him. So there's no majority there.
No, so, I certainly, I'm agreeing with you there, absolutely. Yeah. I think that system stinks. I just wondered if in your referendum, because it's a cut-off in the middle, rather than perhaps you said, well, you've got to get 70%, because then that's a bigger majority of people who are with you, rather than the, and it's 30% rather, who lose out, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, no, I think that the problem with that is that you don't get decisions at all.
Right, okay.
You're not going to get a decision. So it's about motivating the vote to get out. And that's what these signature people are doing. And it's at that stage you find out if there's enough people interested.
Right, yeah.
And because then even when you get it goes to a national referendum, they generally, they're more unlikely to be supported than they are to be supported. But it's like anything in life, Richard, when you're in a relationship, it's knowing that you've been heard, as I'm sure, your lady tell you, being heard. Yeah.
You're not listening to me. You're not listening to me. I'm so sorry. What did you say again?
That's right. So it's the same in politics. We're not being heard.
No. And therefore we get so disgruntled. And of course, people don't engage with it because they just think, what's the point?
Correct. Now, when did you last hear of a mob attacking anybody in Switzerland? When were the banks attacked? When were the police attacked? It's a very stable country because people are heard and because they have this opportunity to speak.
Right.
There are some, there's some good books on this. There's this fella here. He's written a very good book.
Here we go.
And that book basically...
what's his name? Diccon Bewes?
Diccon Bewes, okay.
Diccon Bewes.
Yeah. And he's a Welsh fellow who went over there, and he lives in Switzerland now, and he can't speak highly enough of it. And he's not alone, obviously, in that. But it's a good book because he's the one I learned a lot about the system in there as well. But he talks about life in general. But he says the Swiss enjoy the voting. They enjoy taking part because, who wants to be involved here now? It's very acrimonious. But again, part of that is this is the elites keeping us separate. They want us split off left and right, keeps it nice and simple. I might have a red tie, but I'm not a Labour man, But the point is, this is what they want us to be split, and they want us to be controlled that way.
Yes.
So the parties, okay, there's a very famous book called Political Parties, written by Robert Michaels, and he had studied the socialist parties in Germany in the early 1900s. And he came out with this understanding that the parties are run by a tiny group in the end, and it's called the iron law of oligarchy. This is what he came out with, and this is over 100 years ago. Now they all know this stuff. The elite have been, when you look at them, they're very good, at speaking. But Starmer was Oxford Union man as well. The Oxford Union is a debating society. All the Etonians. Why have we had? Is it 40% of our prime ministers have been Etonians?
Like that, yeah.
They've just spent £18 million building a debating hall in Eton. It was about 2015 they built it. But they've been doing this for generations. They understand the power of someone like Boris, who can cajole you with a bit of fun into doing what they want. And vote for me. That's all it is. As you and I know, it's all about likability. That's all politics is. It's a game show. But then on top of that, as you've seen recently, it's also nudge units pushing people into thinking a certain way and turning people against each other. Okay? And, I thought we were a nation, you hear, oh, it's one nation. Well, it's one nation when we all get to vote, isn't it? Routinely. Now, like in Switzerland, for instance, they vote about 4 times a year. That's it. So they have these referendums, but it works out about 4 times. But a lot of them do it by post. They have a secure system for their voting. They're very concerned about digital voting, and so they're looking at that carefully. But they had it and they dropped it, but because they weren't using the blockchain, okay? Because our group that I'm in, we've got some excellent people on board, and we're at the moment we're looking at producing or providing a system for voting online. Okay, so you'll have it as an app on your phone. Now, believe it or not, in the European Union, there were citizens' initiatives, and they built a platform for this. There is a direct democracy platform on the European Union, but it's not something they made much noise about, funnily enough, because the parties know this is like the sword of Damocles hanging over their head. That's it. Because once the people go, oh, hang on a minute, the Swiss have got it right. Why are we letting these parties carry on as they are? And I wrote to my MP and I said to him, I support direct democracy. What are your thoughts on it? He wrote back to me and said, oh, constitutionally, there are problems with it. At that time, I hadn't, because I found another good book, which is another one for your viewers maybe, is this one, which is Democracy on Demand.
Democracy on Demand, Holding Power to Account. That looks a good book.
It's a very good book. It's by a Manchester University professor. Okay.
Are they easy to read?
Yeah, this one in particular. Yeah, this one's a nice, easy read, and this one's an interesting read because it's more like it's a tour of Switzerland with politics thrown in, industry thrown in, way of life thrown in. So
right. I'll have to. I'll make a note of them at the end from you, and then I'll put the link in the description so people can check them out.
And just for one other one, then, while we're doing it, then.
Whilst we're doing the book review. Here we go.
Yeah. Let the people
rule. How direct democracy can meet the populist challenge.
Yeah. And this is an excellent one for any of your American viewers, all right? Because he's an American academic, and he's very much on side with direct democracy. And he actually puts a whole chapter in there, I think it's chapter 9, where he shows 6 ways they could hold referendums nationally in America, because they've never had a national referendum in America. But believe it or not, Richard, 49 of the 50 states, you have to have a referendum on the constitution of the state, not America, but each
of the state, yeah.
So 49 out of 50. So it's widespread. And there was a period in the early 1900s in America where direct democracy was growing in popularity because they had so many big business issues, J.P. Morgan, Rockefellers, Carnegies, all of these people. So they were building huge powerhouse industries. And I think Rockefeller at one time, he owned 1.5 of America, basically. Their GDP, he had 1.5% of it, one guy.
Wow.
So that was when they went to break up all the oil companies. But that's when they introduced a lot of these direct democracy requirements to control these powerful groups controlling the politicians. Because, it was the same cronyism that we see today. But it might have been it was even more blatant then. But now it's more dangerous, I believe, because with the move towards globalization, what you're seeing is a lot of people in the book as well. If you've got time, I can explain a little bit about this. Where America, 1939, first couple of weeks of September, Poland's invaded, and the Council on Foreign Relations, which is a big academic group that looks after advice. It's a consultancy, and there were about 500 members, but they had very good network within the State Department. So they went to the State Department in 1939 and said, after the war, we need to look at where America is. We're not in this war, but we need to look at what will happen when it's all finished. So by the time Pearl Harbor was struck, the Americans already had the war plan for after the war, and it's an area called the Grand Area. And this was really where the resources were that they would need for their economic progress after the war. So, and Rockefellers paid for the CFR to do the surveys and to work with the State Department. So this is all covered in, where am I now? Yeah, another academic work for you, for the guys who are interested in this type of thing.
Yeah, let's put that up. Here we go. The Foundations of American Century. Foundations of the American... Back a bit.
Oh, back a bit, sorry.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's lovely. There, look at that. In the Rise of American Power. What does that say? The Ford, Carnegie and Rockefeller Foundations in the Rise of American Power.
Yeah, because these three foundations are obviously... they're called the Big Three in America, and they basically decide policy. They also created a lot of the policy for education. The Carnegie Group set up the educational services. Rockefeller joined them. Chicago University was paid for by Rockefeller. So what they wanted to do was to create this whole network of control. So the education system, which had been, as I was explaining to you, like Eton, they have a school over there called Groton, might be, it's Groton, and huge numbers of presidents have been to that. It's just the same as Eton. It's an English-style public school which teaches these people how to stand up and talk, take initiative, and work with your network. The network is fantastic that they have because they've been doing this for centuries now. So the whole school system at the elite level is to ensure that they maintain control. And the way to do that is, as you see, with the Tory party, they're good at this. Michael Gove is an excellent speaker. You know, if you take these guys on, you know, face to face, they're very good, very good. And that's how they get control. And so normal people getting on with their lives, they haven't been trained.
No.
That's the point. I mean, you're a good speaker. You're an entertainer.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's very kind of you. I mean, when you look at these, a lot of these people, they know how to say nothing, but use a lot of words. You know, and you think, oh, I've just had something very important told to me, but actually they've committed themselves to nothing. They've been very bland, really, and you know, they don't answer questions very clearly at all, and they seem to avoid a question. And often you'll get them saying things like, "Oh, well, if you're asking me this," and you think, no, that wasn't what they were asking you. Actually, they asked you, "Is this policy going to hurt us?" And they go, "Well, if you're asking me, will some parts of the community suffer in this way?" Well, no, I wasn't asking you that. And you know, and journalists also seem to be very lax in sort of being able to pin them down. But you're right; these people can speak in very smooth manners that I mean, I would struggle. I mean, you know, I can waffle around a subject, but you've also got to have the cerebral capacity to understand the nuance of what they're saying, so that you can analyze that very rapidly. And unless you're practicing that a lot, then it's difficult, isn't it? And it's difficult for ordinary people, perhaps, when they're being spoken down to by these polished politicians, to be able to come back and rebut what they're saying or question it in detail.
Well, that's why the direct democracy movement is looking at giving people that power, that you know, we take it. Because in the end, we don't have to ask them. We just have to vote for it. You see?
Right. Yeah.
So,
Can I? I just want to ask you this question, which has been coming in my mind. Say we had this system in place. We had the COVID virus coming in, and whereas we've seen the government's approach was right, we've got emergency power, and we're telling you now this is what you've got to do. How would that work in a hybrid democracy in which there is a problem? And everybody's going to be exposed to this problem one way or another, but there's lots of decisions in solving the problem and what we should do. How would that work? What would the Prime Minister's approach be?
Right. Well, obviously, they've got to get the approval of the people if there's a referendum on it. And they have, they'll have votes. And what happens with this particular one, with the WHO, then obviously the panic propaganda was put out there, and it was in Switzerland as well. So the Swiss have, the people might well vote for measures that were the same as ours. I don't think they did, but they had similar. But the point is, when you're clearing up afterwards, you're clearing up quickly as well, because you can put initiatives in to clear things out of the way, and if you get enough support. So if you've got this global panic going on and the propaganda's pouring out, but it won't work next time, you see, will it? Because a lot of people now have woken up, and what I've seen is even 25 years ago we didn't have access to the internet as we do now.
No,
it was there's a lot more material on there, and it's a lot easier to get a hold of stuff, and you just Google it and you can find out pretty much what you want. However, it depends what they'll stick on there as well and what they will allow. But people are wising up to this, and there are alternative channels. And so, like your channel in terms of YouTube. So there are a lot more people, I believe, are getting wise to this. So we're looking at really letting people know about the fact that there is this option. The book is to say to people, to educate them to some extent in terms of, this is how it works, but also how historically we've been pushed down this path and we've been sold a pup. Anglo-Saxon age, it was a war-banned world. All right, there are 80 men, 200 men maximum, maybe, used to control a valley or a hill area, and that was the war band. And it was led by one man, and he had a poet, and these poets used to sing these great poems about the wonderful leader and his fantastic family, and that's for hundreds of years. That was the Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-Britain world. And then after that, you had the Norman invasion, and they took the land and they controlled it for 700, 800 years. And where are we now? I've got another one.
I can feel another book coming up.
Yeah, you're right there. Here it is. This is a very interesting one. An open elite.
Oh, okay. Right. And an open elite. Was that 1540 to 1880?
Yeah. And basically, this is a very good couple of American historians. So this is not conspiracy stuff, and what they're saying is that those landed gentry that we've seen, they basically sat in power for 700 years is what they reckon, and even up until 1860, I think it was, 500 of the seats in Parliament out of 500 out of 640 odd were still run by landed gentry. And they
is that like the rotten boroughs and things like that, in which you had 10 people lived in an area but had the same influence as somebody that had 500? That sort of thing. Yeah.
In Nottingham at one point for about 50 years they didn't even bother having a vote. They tied it up. There was no voting even. That's early 1700s. So that's the world we've lived in, and they've fashioned it. And it's not quite like the Matrix, but the reality is that's how it was. And then the vote was won eventually. Nearly 1 million men dead in World War One, and 1918 they gave those 40% who didn't have the property valuation, they gave them the vote as well. So the working class basically got the vote, but it's only after 1 million died. So that's what I personally get moved by. That's what I'm doing, is trying to say, we've got this vote, but once every 5 years, once every 4 years. I'm sorry, it's not good enough. We should have the opportunity to, and it's a better country for it. You do have a nation. Otherwise, you're just trying to split the people into different parties because you can control them more easily, and that's how it works. I do have one more book for you.
Excellent.
So where are we now?
I feel booksellers are going to promote this video left, right, and centre. As long as can people get a 10% discount? We want a bookseller, an online bookseller, who will supply these books and give us a good 10 or 20% discount on this reading list.
Well, this one in particular is great. It's Propaganda by Edward Bernays.
Right.
Edward Bernays, he's the founder of the PR business, public relations. Okay. Now,
have you got it there? You're going to show us the cover. Here we go. Propaganda. That's an interesting cover, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, he was the nephew of Freud. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So, Freud's nephew, and he basically advised all of the American industries. So he would go and he'd say, "I won't sell the services of one bacon, company. I'll sell the bacon industry." So he got huge strategic payments, So he got everyone to have bacon and eggs in the morning. You see, this is what he did. He got women smoking. He started the fashion for women to smoke. Okay.
Right.
Now, but here's the first. I'll read it because this is really important, I think, for everybody.
Okay.
It's the first lines of the first chapter. It's only a few lines.
That's okay.
And this is what it says: the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. So, 1928. And that is what...
That's so true, though, isn't it? That's so true. Those who rule. I mean, you could say that's what goes on in advertising and people and in supermarkets as well. They'll give you the choice. You think you've got a choice, but you don't really have a choice. You've only got what the supermarkets supposedly give you the choice, and that seems to be also the same as in government. Those who basically, he put it brilliantly.
Yeah. Now, I think, if you put the website up, you'll see that Elon Musk is on our website. Now,
yeah, let's grab that. Hang on, bear with me.
We haven't asked him to be there, but he's a big fan of direct democracy, you see.
There we go.
And as he says, look at that. The potential for corruption is substantially diminished in a direct democracy versus a representative democracy. Now, Musk is no fool, obviously, and there's a man who understands the power of having a direct democracy, that we would remove a lot of the corruption issues that we face. And just to give you some kind of figures, the per capita debt in Switzerland is about half that of Britain in terms of percentages, So our GDP, we've got about 100% of our GDP in debt. Theirs is like about 48. So when you've got people in control at these local levels or nationally, you get better government.
Right.
You get a lot less waste, because if you're in one canton or in Yorkshire and you have your county schools or your local council looking after your bins, then you've got more direct interest in what they're spending, and most of a large part of the spending is at local level. So that's how it is done. You devolve all of this down. So I see direct democracy as much more powerful than just, are your bins getting changed, once a week instead of twice, or every 2 weeks. It's about
how does that work with your how does that work then with your councils? Because in when it's like to the bins and things like that, all the 15-minute cities, you see the people in, say, Thetford. I did a video interviewing them, and they were sort of saying, look, you're supposed to be our council. You're supposed to represent us. We're going to be voting for you, and yet all you're doing is taking the diktats from above and telling us, without asking us, what we're doing.
Yeah, well, that's the whole point of the referendums and the initiatives, isn't it?
Yeah, you wipe that out. So I mean, the councils would still exist because
correct.
they've got to administer stuff, haven't they?
Yeah, they do.
But you're saying to them through the referendum, look, these are the choices we've made. It's not for you to make the choice. It's to us to sort of come up with, the what's the word I'm looking for? The approval that we can do these things.
Yeah, basically, they can propose.
Yes.
We can decline.
Yes.
Or we.
Absolutely. That's the nub of it, isn't it?
Yeah, basically, it's silence is assent. They put it forward. If there's no one crying out for a referendum, that's assent. So you give it, say, 3 months, whatever it is, for these things, to be supported. And if there's not enough signatures against it, then it just goes through. So, and when the king gets it in Britain as an act, he can say, okay, this has definitely got the assent and the approval of the public, because it's either been through a referendum and passed, or there wasn't a referendum, which, most laws don't get referendums. Most laws don't get objected to because of this process. They know they're going to have to go through that. So it's a consensual government. They're believe it or not, their cabinet is made up of 7 people, and there's, I think it's two from three different parties and one from one of the smaller parties, and they kind of rotate. The president rotates every year. So this is what they've done. So that's the slightly more complicated bit, but that is all because they understand that you've just got to agree amongst yourselves, and we're here to administer the state. We're not here to make gazillions out of it and find loads of contracts for me and my mates. Whatever.
Presumably they don't have that many people then marching in the street with placards and all of that, saying this is a draconian rule that you've just brought in, nobody wants it, all of that. There's face recognition left, right and centre and things like that. And unless, if they don't want it, and there's enough signatures, then that's it. Exactly.
So, you don't get that. What you get is you'll get stopped to say, will you sign this, referendum proposal? So
sounds very polite and very much a civilised way of doing things.
Yeah, and that's why, that guy, Diccon Bewes, is living there, and he sees the difference, and he says, this is what the world should be doing.
Yeah.
And this is my point, is that, it goes beyond Britain. It goes out. Are we living in democracies? No, we're not. We're living in representative democracies, and the representative is the important word, isn't it?
Yes.
Because that's where the power lies. It doesn't lie with us. The democracy is a sham. That's a cover word for them getting away with, instead of the landed elite controlling it, for hundreds of years, nearly, over 700 years, they've just basically devolved it down to the representatives, and those now, who controls the parties? That's the important question. Okay.
Well, yes.
Yeah. That's the point. And it's the same in America, same in Britain. It's even, I think they're in a even more dire state than we are, because they are looking at real problems, I think, in the weeks and years ahead. And look at the banking crisis. When that, comes to full fruition, it's just starting. They're putting plasters on it, but it will blow. And I'm afraid that's when, we need some solutions. And, we believe that with direct democracy, we say, you had your time, you financialized everything, so there's no industry now, really. You gave everything to China, and you didn't ask us. You just got on with it because there was easier money for you and your banker mates. But our growth rate here is almost stagnant. It's about 1.5% per annum or something on average across the West. In these other countries, it's not, but they're still industrial. And yes, they're coming from a lower base, but we used to have much higher growth rates before the banks got basically let loose, where the rules were changed, from what they had learned in the Depression and with the crash, to control the banks and separate off retail from merchant banking, basically. And then they let them in together, and they just fed like sharks in a frenzy on the deposits. So you've got the fiat banking system, you've got all of these issues that need controlled. And unfortunately, they're not being controlled, and that's what's tearing us apart. And with direct democracy at national level and down to local level, you start to take control. And the trouble is, the bankers love globalization because this gives them a whole world to play with.
Yeah.
It gives them, and the resource area for America grew when the Soviet Union collapsed. The Soviet Union collapsed. They wanted the Russian assets, you see, because the grand area was about resources to feed their economy. But when they say their economy, what they really mean is their companies, okay? They're companies that are led by very few families who control it. Do you want another book here, by the way, Richard? I've got another book.
Another book? Fantastic. We're going through Neil's personal library here, which is great. I love it.
Right. Now, this is Wealth...
Here we go. Wealth and Power in America.
Yeah, all right. So what I've got here is a quote from
That looks like a very old book.
It's 1962, but it gives you an idea because I've got a more recent one for you as well. So. Right now, here we are from 1955.
People are currently sorry, Neil, people are going. Oh, right. They're getting on e-books or World of Books or any all these online places are going. Is it? The last copy. The last copy. Somebody's already beat me to it.
I've probably got the last copy.
Oh, you've got the last one. There we are. And he's selling it for a mere £100.
I've never sold a book in my life, Richard.
No, okay. I interrupted you. Go on.
In 1955, the 200 top non-financial companies, all right, most of which dominated their respective industries, okay, they directly owned 43% of the total assets of 435,000 non-financial corporations.
Blimey.
200 companies, all right? Now, these corporations were controlled by approximately 2,500 men, and probably even fewer. Do you start to see what we're talking about? That's it. And now I will show you the next one, which is the Superhubs.
Superhubs, how the financially elite and their networks rule the world. Gosh, the information's out there, isn't it?
It's all out there, see, and that's why I pulled a lot together. I was buying a book a day, basically, for the last 7 months. And I don't read them all. I usually read the introduction and the conclusion, and then I look at the index and I find the relevant bits that I want.
Excellent.
But this lady, she wrote this book, and she worked with Nouriel Roubini, who's a very famous. He's Dr. Doom. He's famous as. All right.
Dr. Doom.
Dr. Doom, very famous forecaster. He's got one out now, Mega Threats, which is a good book as well.
Dr. Doom.
He doesn't like that name, but that's the one he's
No, I'm sure he doesn't.
Yeah. But what she says here, you'll see we had 200 American companies, before. Now we're down to, here we are, what is it now? Researchers started out with a database comprising 37 million economic actors, 43,000 transnational companies, 43,000. There was a tightly knit group of 1,300 companies hold a large portion of the corporate control in the world. But the inner core consists of only 147 companies now. So we're down, and this is globally.
Yeah.
This is global.
This is the same story, isn't it? The few.
Exactly. Not surprisingly, most entities of this supercore are banks. The financial institutions dominate the top 10. So if we don't get control of these people, everything's going to be owned by them. That's the reality. You can see it. This vortex, but you've now got only 147, and that's globally. America had 200 companies at least before, and that's in the 50s. But now you've got less than 200, and that's the global elite. And they run the central banks, and they suck everything up. And then when they break the system, they want paid. But they own all of these companies.
Yeah.
No, we should be saying, excuse me, you all see all those companies? We'll have, if you want some money to refloat this, we'll take them off your hands. You see? And then we'll own.
Yeah.
Instead of just owning the bank, we want all of the company. Without this moral hazard on their part, this is just going to continue.
It's just a big grab, isn't it?
It's horrendous.
Yeah. So I'm just now thinking about my sceptical viewers who are going, sounds great, Neil, love the idea, but it'll never happen. They've got too much control. They're never going to let go. How do we actually make the hybrid? What would be your approach? What do we need to do?
You've got to remember, we've done this before. The UKIP guys were involved with getting laughed at and treated as scum and all the other things that they were called. But we got the vote. Yeah,
we got the Brexit vote.
So it took many years. But this is a crisis we're in.
Yeah.
Now, lots of independent people out there running for councils start to back direct democracy. The picture starts to change. What about someone like Andrew Bridgen? He's just been thrown out the Tories.
Yeah.
And he's a good, decent guy.
Yeah.
Ex-Royal Marine officer. And he's the type of guy who might think, if he introduced the idea of this into Parliament, you watch their faces drop. Believe me, they'll know that the end is nigh. Okay, This is the point. If you want control, you want politicians who are like those in Switzerland, who are members of your community and want to do the community good, not just themselves, and that's the issue. It's seen as a huge feeding frenzy for anyone who wants to go into politics. So we need to start getting people to stand up and say, I'll do the direct democracy bit, because then I've got support of the people. It's a simple system. It's nothing really complicated. It's been developed. Don't forget, it's been used for 175 years now in Switzerland. This is not complicated.
Yeah.
They started it, so we can do it. Now, we're creating, as I said, this voting platform so that people will be able to start voting. So, people can start proposing votes and start comparing it and going to their MPs and saying, I want you to work like this. I want you. And you need to see that these are real, genuine votes. It's a highly secure platform. And that, these are what we want. So if you don't support what we want, we'll find a party that does. Okay, now, how did we get the Brexit vote? All Cameron needed to know was that his vote was slipping away. Now, the Conservatives are in deep trouble now. As I say, Conservative Party, Progressive Conservatives in Canada disappeared, gone, overnight. In a similar, there's a culling coming for the Conservatives. It's, they're deeply, deeply unpopular. So the only lifeline they may have is to look at something that will actually motivate people to vote for them, and I believe direct democracy will do that.
So you're saying that at the next election, if people got themselves together, the Conservatives could save their party from losing out and the country going under Labour, which we are kind of backing.
Or surviving. At least a few of the MPs surviving instead of none. So,
right?
Yeah. They might not keep power, but they might at least save their party.
Yeah.
Okay.
If they switch to that, or the MPs are enough pressure is put on individual MPs to say, look, this is so that you might save your job, because they want to save their job, don't they? They're very they're very well paid.
Yeah, correct. In addition to that, though, I did send you this morning. There were a series of documents in the early 2000s that the Conservatives did put out supporting direct democracy.
Oh, did they?
Talking about Switzerland, yeah. Michael Gove, Priti Patel, Kwarteng, Hunt, yeah. All of these people were part of that group. Support Daniel Hannan. There's about 38 of them.
Right.
So
they seem to have changed their tune now, though, haven't they?
Yeah, because they've got power now, you see. They've got the power. But then Tony Blair was sat there for 3 times he'd been elected. They're left hanging out to dry. So suddenly they're looking around, grasping for anything. And suddenly, Michael Gove, come on, Michael, you were supporting it. So that is the reality. The world is changing. Democracy has to develop. It can't stay as it was.
No.
We don't have that control. The Swiss have got, inflation in Switzerland is about 2% at the moment. It's going to drop down to 1% next year.
Wow.
Okay. They control their nation very differently to ours, and they don't have natural resources in terms of oil and gas and all the rest of it, do they? But the people are the natural resource over there.
Yes.
And they're the ones who control the state. And they've got the common sense to apply their brain power to their whole nation, and that is all combined. So you get the benefit of all of your people's ideas and thoughts. What we get is a few hundred people who will be told what to do by the party whip when there are major votes. So in other words, it's got nothing to do with what the people want. No. It's what every party has decided they wish to push.
Well, this is really fascinating, and at the moment, so many people are trying to work out what to do, how to get away from this broken system, because nobody wants to go down the route of China, and it looks like that's where the government are trying to push us and control us with digital. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that people in the West, particularly in this country, will even if they put all these masts up and all of these things and try and fry our brains with high-powered 5G or whatever it is, are just going to sort of roll over and do it, because I just think they'll just go, hang on a second, this isn't how we rock, you may want it. And so this is a great time to be talking about all of these things. Can people find more on your website? Let's just put that up. Which is because you sent me 2 websites actually. But...
2 websites, yeah. So that's one website, and the other one is that's the.
Oh, hang on, I'm not showing the whole thing. There we go, where we get down to with the consent of the people.
Correct.
Okay. And it shows all about that. And the just remind me what the other website was, because I had it up and I've lost it now.
So you got it's ddrightnow.com.
ddrightnow.com. Let me just punch that in, because I'm sure I had that dd. You're looking at my searches there, dd.
Yeah, I'm looking at
No, I'm just making sure that there was nothing, because you never quite know when you're searching stuff. This is my studio computer, which doesn't have personal searches on, of course. It's all work related. DD, what did you say it was? DD?
Right now.
Right now. Oh yeah, here we go. I've obviously searched for it before. We bring that back up on the screen in that way. There we go. And so people can get. It's a bit big there. Let's just reduce it.
They can join. They can join the movement. Send through their requests to join, and obviously, what we're hoping to do though is we're trying to motivate a lot of independents to back direct democracy. And you're getting more and more independence. Funnily enough, in Brighton, for instance, there are a lot more independent councillors now than there used to be. So all of these parties are finding it much harder to get control. But what we want to see is, well, okay, why don't you just all, as independents, back direct democracy?
Right. Yeah.
That could be the thread that runs through it. So, they may have direct democracy tools there, but, why not expand them? And so, if you have all of these little areas like oil spills, and they all start to coalesce around the country at the local level, or we get Andrew Bridgen. Did you have him on your program?
I've interviewed him, yeah.
I thought
one of my early big interviews.
Yeah. Well, maybe he'd be interested, because obviously.
I'll send him a cheeky link to this video.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, my pleasure.
You give him an email address, no problem.
I will.
Okay.
Brilliant.
Because our IT guys are busy working, putting together this platform, and we're about one step away from Elon Musk as a contact as well. So
fantastic.
We hope to move fairly rapidly. So once that platform's ready, is to look at it, and say, look, this is highly secure, well designed, thoroughly thought through system, and it might be tied into the European Union one as well. But we'd have blockchain maybe on it if we can. And then so that adds more security again. So that's the plan. It's we've got very good people on the team. They know what they're doing. I don't, when it comes to IT. So I leave that to them.
Yeah,
and,
clearly I don't. People have seen that. And you've got your book, One Vote Away, which is you don't know when that's coming out. Fairly soon.
Yeah, fairly soon. It'll be out fairly soon, either online or it'll be, as quickly as we can get it out through a publisher. So we've got publishers lined up to go and approach with it. But it depends if they like the contact or not. But, like this guy in the Foundations book said, a lot of books don't get published by these publishers because the foundations control the universities.
Yeah, the media, the going out. So that's okay really, because people have now got 25,000 books to read anyway, thanks to your reading list you've just given us. And by the time they've got through, there's more, my God. By the time they've got through that, then your book will be available, and at that point we'll have direct democracy anyway, which will be fun.
Just to get him off the screen.
No, I don't mean that. Neil, this has been brilliant. So stay there for a minute because we've got to wind it up now. So people I'll put the links to some of those books in there. Is there on your website, have you got those books, or this is just your no okay. I'll try and link to as many of those as I can then, because I'm sure all people can find them, scroll through the video. They want me to work really hard, don't they? And your website addresses I'll put in there. It's amazing what people go, there'll be something in the video and then somebody will email me, Richard, that thing you referenced, and you just go, okay, I'll go to Google, then find the link, send it to them, and you just think, well, you could have done that yourself, really. I'm quite busy, but it is extraordinary. Neil, it's been really interesting talking to you and understanding this hybrid democracy of direct democracy, and understand how the referendums will go. And I'm sure a lot of people will be interested. And through that, if people have got serious questions to ask you, other than what's your reading list, can they get in touch through the website?
Yeah, through the website.
Yeah.
And if you send on, if you've got any other contacts you thought you could send on the links to for what we're doing, any of these other broadcasters or other people that you.
I've got a website, richardvobes.com, and I'll put a link to your website on my resources page so that people can go there and grab stuff. It sounds like I now need to have a reading page as well. I think I might have to instigate that as well, because actually people have sent me a lot of interesting books and we've been reviewing them. So I need to do that, and then recommended books as well. So that would be good. No, but thank you so much, Neil. It's been lovely talking to you. I'm sure there's lots of stuff I would be interested. I'm just looking back here when it said, you're a military officer and all the secret servicey stuff that you've been doing. But of course, we can't talk about that, unfortunately. But it's been fascinating. Thank you so much, and it's good to have somebody who is very passionate about our democracy at the moment. We're going through some very difficult times. So thank you.
We appreciate what you're doing, Richard, and thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Just doing my bit. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. What a fascinating interview that was. Do go and check out the website, get in touch, and put influence on your MPs. A lot of people have been doing that in one way or another. Talk about the direct democracy. It might well be a way that these MPs can hold on to their power and their jobs, and utilise their constituents a lot better than they have been so far. Neil, it's been a joy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All the best.
Until next time, folks, I'll be back soon. But from Neil and I, goodbye.